Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a real head-scratcher in global finance, the China IPO paradox.
It's a real puzzle, right? I mean, US-China tensions are basically at a fever pitch, but at the same time, we're seeing this flood of Chinese companies rushing to list on Wall Street. Some are even saying it could hit a record by 2025. So what gives? What's behind this counterintuitive gold rush? Let's get into it.
Okay, but before we dive in, just a quick disclaimer. Everything we're about to talk about is for informational purposes. It's all based on the source materials we've looked at, and it should absolutely not be taken as financial or investment advice. All right, let's go.
So, to really get a grip on this paradox, we've got to meet the companies that are right at the center of the story. Now, these aren't the big names you hear about every day. We're talking about a very specific group known as China's little giants.
The official Chinese term for them is 专精特新. Basically, it's a government stamp of approval for top-tier small and medium-sized companies. Think specialized, refined, special, and new. These businesses are known for being incredibly focused, innovative, and creating unique products. And make no mistake, these aren't just random companies. They are a core part of China's national strategy to climb up the global industrial ladder.
And check this out. This 5, 6, 7, 8 profile, which comes from a Frost & Sullivan report, really shows you how serious these little giants are. Just think about it for a second. Half of them are plowing over 10 million RMB into R&D. A staggering 80% are number one in their specific market within their own province. And they are laser-focused. 90% of their money comes from their main line of business. So yeah, these are not just some risky startups. We're talking about established, high-octane industry leaders. So let's be super clear here. We are not talking about startups tinkering in a garage. No way. These are serious, innovative, and incredibly competitive companies. They're the very engine that Beijing is counting on to drive its next wave of industrial and high-tech growth.
All right, so if these companies are so critical to China's big picture strategy, why on earth are they looking to Wall Street for money? And that question gets us right to the heart of the matter, the push-pull forces that are driving this great migration of capital.
It really boils down to a pretty simple 3-step logic. First, you've got the push from home. The domestic IPO process in China is getting tougher, slower, and just more complicated. Then you have the pull from the US, which offers access to the biggest pool of capital in the world, a market that's much more comfortable with risk and even pre-profit tech companies. And the final piece? The SPAC shortcut. Using a special purpose acquisition company is just a faster, simpler, and often cheaper way to get listed in the US.
And this one phrase from the source material just sums up the frustration perfectly. Financing is difficult, expensive, and slow. You know, for a company that's ambitious and trying to grow fast, that kind of bottleneck is a massive reason to start looking for money somewhere else, regardless of the political drama.
But here's the catch. Getting your hands on that American capital means walking straight into a geopolitical minefield. And that sets up this huge collision course between pure market logic and the messy reality of global politics. I mean, the financial argument is rock solid. You can't deny it. But for these companies, trying to cash in on that logic is like stepping onto a super high, super shaky tightrope with the US on one side and China on the other.
And what's at the very center of all this tension? It's a concept that an EY geostrategy report calls digital sovereignty. The idea is pretty simple. It's a nation's drive to control its own digital world, its data, its networks, its whole digital backbone, without having to rely on another country's hardware or software. And this, right here, has become a key battleground in the US-China tech rivalry.
And this new front line isn't a physical place. It's digital infrastructure. We're talking about a global race for dominance in everything from semiconductors and AI algorithms to the massive data centers that power our world. So, when a Chinese tech firm lists in the US, it's planting itself smack in the middle of this fault line, and that sends up red flags everywhere, in both Washington and Beijing.
So, what does walking this geopolitical tightrope actually mean for a company? Well, it looks like a bunch of new walls going up. We're talking about rising protectionism, way more scrutiny on foreign investments,
tight export controls on advanced tech, and new rules about where data has to be stored. And on top of all that, you've got intense supply chain audits and much tougher compliance demands from US regulators, like the PCAOB. It's safe to say the path is getting a lot bumpy.
Okay, so with all these massive risks, you have to ask again, why do it? Well, this is where we see that it's not really a contradiction. It's a calculated risk. It's a cold, hard, strategic move in a very new, very complex global game.
And here's the key takeaway. These firms aren't blind to the risks. They're weighing them very carefully. What they're doing is something called regulatory and capital arbitrage. It's a fancy term, but it just means they're smartly finding the gaps. In a world that's breaking into different blocks, they're navigating the cracks to get to the capital that's easiest to access and works best for them.
So at the end of the day, it all boils down to this one big trade-off. Listing in the US, the pros are huge. Massive amounts of capital, high valuations, and a global profile. The cons? Also huge. Geopolitical risk, intense regulatory pressure, and political hostility. And listing in China? The pros are government support and home field advantage. The cons? A much slower process and major financing headaches. For these little giants, the calculation seems to be that, for right now, the potential reward of a US listing is still worth the risk. And all of this leaves us with a really big question, maybe the defining question for the future of global finance. Is it capital versus country? In this massive tug of war between money, which wants to flow freely across borders, and nations, which want to protect their own interests, which one is going to win out and shape the next decade? The truth is, nobody has the answer yet. That story is still being written. For more explainers like this, breaking down the complex forces shaping our world, make sure you follow us at 华尔街透视. That's Wall Street Insights. If you got something out of this, please go ahead and like and share it. Thanks so much for tuning in.